At the start of the Biden administration, there was what now appears to be a misconception that celebrity staff was a thing of the past. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki, in particular, has quite the fandom. You can buy Psaki Bomb merchandise. She's even been featured in Vogue. Psaki was asked about it. Here's what she had to say.
Look, I think what I go in there every day trying to do is what I think the president asked me to do and wants us all to do, which is to use the briefing room and the form of communicating from the White House as a mechanism for sharing information, not treating the American people like they just need, tweets, right? Treating the American people with the intelligence and the content and the information they deserve. And also, at the same time, not being tolerant of misinformation or misleading information because the public deserves better. So I hope people don't see it that way. I don't know. I didn't make up the term. It's like in a lot of ways, like hugely flattering, I guess. But all I think about is like what we're trying to do in there every day and what we're trying to do behind the scenes too, which is just communicate our objectives and the president's agenda to the public.
Joining us now to discuss is White House reporter for Real Clear Politics, Phil Wegman. Welcome, Phil.
Thanks for having me.
So first of all, what was Jen Psaki doing with that light background there? Was that almost some kind of subtle dig at Mediaite? Like, I will appear on your site, but you will not be able to see me because I'll leave this window open behind me?
Jen is real, and Jen also has the problems that we all have zooming from home. That, sometimes we have bad light in the background.
But so all separately, as somebody who works in the White House on a daily basis, what do you think the effect of this new kind of celebrity spokesperson model that we have is?
There's certainly adoration for the press secretary from the left, and I'd be lying if I didn't tell you that it's not something that we think about, not in terms of her being a celebrity. Jen is very approachable. You can ask her difficult questions. You can reach out to her team and talk to them. But you think about that because there's an army who is going to call you out immediately on Twitter if you ask a question that they think she got the better of you in an answer with. So that's been one effect. But yeah, I think that the celebrity is likely a product of Washington, where you have a bunch of geeks and nerds who are really interested in government, and the one who gets to be in front of the camera is going to be the celebrity.
Doesn't she kind of have Trump to thank for this? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like since the Trump administration, that is when press secretaries sort of got a lot of notoriety and were in the public eye. I mean, because the media was constantly saying, oh, look at this paid liar, this professional liar for the Trump administration. And so now, Jen Psaki is sort of riding on almost the coattails of the Trump administration press secretaries. And now she's the one that's in the spotlight. And people say, oh, look at this, finally somebody telling us the truth. I mean, maybe I just wasn't paying attention before, but isn't this sort of something that's new since the Trump administration, this celebritizing of the press secretary?
Well, there's certainly, antipathy on both sides here, right? That the left is going to dislike, whether it was Kayleigh or Sarah or Sean, they're going to dislike them and the answers they give, while the right is going to lionize them. Something similar is happening here on the left. I don't know if it's to the same degree, but I think this also might just be a product of the fact that this administration, the way they run things is that you do not see much of President Biden, as much as his predecessor, something that we're dealing with just this week in particular. But you do have a daily briefing. And Jen is the spokesperson for the president. She's the authoritative voice in the room, and you see her on a regular basis. I will note, though, that I think that, it's not a secret that the White House is doing their best to, answer questions, yes, but also to do their best to lower temperatures in that room, to try and give boring answers. And look, some of my colleagues have been less than eager to push the administration on some pretty difficult issues, that there have been, some, important back and forth, but the needling that we saw in the previous administration from the press, it's not there to the same degree.
Now, it's a very good point you make, Phil, and you and I both were served in the previous administration, you obviously as a reporter, me in the Trump White House as the White House communications director. And we did see that there was an antagonism from the press. There was and a very fair, I would say, questioning and not letting people get away with non-answers. I've been a little bit disappointed to see how rare Jen Psaki is actually truly pushed. I mean, Peter Doocy gets a lot of points at Fox News for pushing her on some of these tough questions, but right now seems like a pretty formative moment for this administration with what's happening in Afghanistan. And Jen appears, if this, out of office reply is true, to be out of the office for a week, something I never would have gotten away with as a government spokesperson. Phil, is this true? And what do you, as a member of the White House press corps, make of her being gone during the biggest national security crisis, at least of the last year?
It's concerning, to say the least. You are getting an email back from the press secretary saying that she's going to be out of the office until August 22nd. I'm certain that's going to change. If it doesn't, it's very concerning that she's not here at a moment when the United States is facing a foreign policy crisis. Also, Jen has experience in foreign policy. She was over at State. So certainly this would seem to be something that's in her wheelhouse. She could explain what the heck the administration was thinking. But, I think that if you take a step back, what this reflects is not just a question about press access. What this reflects is that Joe Biden, for the last couple of days, has been at Camp David. Before that, he was sort of ping-ponging between Delaware, Camp David, and the White House, making that circuit to be available for infrastructure talks. Now he's in Camp David and he's away from the cameras. The White House, clearly they thought that the Afghan army was going to hold. They bought the spin from their advisors that after $1 trillion, the Afghan army was actually somehow capable. And it seems the president really did believe what he told reporters in July, which is that, they were a formidable fighting force. Instead, we have seen the exact opposite. Instead, we see something that is, approaching a crisis, and the comparisons to Saigon do not seem to be overreactions at this point. And where is Biden? Well, he's still at Camp David. And so if you're the press secretary, she would she would get torn to pieces in that room, even with a press that is more sympathetic to this White House, if she's facing the music while the president is away on vacation. So I think that explains the current moment.
And I would just note for our viewers that the president always travels with the press pool. So even though he is behind closed doors at Camp David, there is a White House press pool in close proximity to him. So if he did want to immediately address the press, it would not be hard to do that. But he is choosing not to.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
And it's like the Afghanistan papers were never published. There was this massive revelation from the Washington Post, was it last year or so, that exposed the reality that the United States had kind of been lying to itself about this state of the Afghan security forces for decades, really, not just years, but for decades. That was published. It was like a half-a-day story, and now here we are. It seems like the U.S. kind of fooled itself. Like the U.S. government, even though it knew it had all of this information, it believed the propaganda that it was putting out. And Jen Psaki in that Mediaite interview talked about how she sees her role as combating misinformation and misleading information and combating propaganda. And it raises a real concern that the government spokesperson, whose job it is to provide propaganda, is selling herself as an antidote to propaganda, and is then going to convince tens of millions of people, because of her celebrity status, that she is the one that's offering truth, not the media, not the journalists, and so you wind up then in the situation that Philip talked about with these legions of people on social media attacking reporters who challenge her because she's this avatar of anti-propaganda. So Philip, does it actually end up making it more difficult for reporters to do their jobs if they're getting subjected to these kind of online attacks? Like, are editors coming down on reporters and saying, well, you must have done something wrong if you're getting all of this criticism, or is it seen for what it is?
Well, look, I've been on the receiving end of a couple Psaki bombs at this point. I think the last notable one is when she called me out for a story where you had governors complaining that the vice president and the president no longer sat in on these weekly COVID calls wrote a story about that, and Psaki was very quick to say, well, how many governors did you talk to? Oh, you only talked to 2 or 3 on the record? And I talked to many more, but surprise, surprise, they didn't want to go on the record and complain about the administration because there were billions of dollars in aid that were going out the door. So in terms of the pushback, I think that reporters at this point, they know that they're going to get called names online. That's part of the landscape. I think what's more at stake here is you don't want to have that incredibly adversarial back and forth with the press secretary, so that her team is like, all right, well, behind the scenes where we actually make news, we're going to be less likely to call you back quickly. I will say, though, I think that, while the tone has been different, you have had individual reporters who have been, aggressive at times, Nora O'Donnell, Peter Alexander, certainly Peter Doocy, they've been aggressive. And I think that, the reason why the current moment is a watershed is, you mentioned the Afghan papers a second ago, Ryan. What we're dealing with here is not just a issue of foreign intervention. This is not just about the military. This is also about institutions as well. And this is a cultural as well as a political moment. That's why they need to get someone in front of the podium, because at a moment when you have trust in institutions at an all-time low, one institution that a lot of middle America, a lot of people from where I'm from, still trust is the military. They've put their faith there. They've sent their sons and daughters to fight. And now a lot of people who made tremendous sacrifices for the last 2 decades are all seeing that for naught, that they're watching what's playing out on their cable news screens right now. And so this isn't just a political crisis. It's also a cultural one. I think that faith in that institution is now flagging. And you would hope that someone would be able to, shoot straight with the American people. And that first press conference that, Jen or one of her deputies is back in town for, well, I expect that, I certainly hope that my colleagues will be aggressive. I'll just leave it at that.
Well, Philip, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
And we'll have more Rising for you right after this.